Hollie, and welcome everybody to this masterclass. I'm so delighted to be hosting it today, and even more delighted to see how many people have come, because we weren't sure whether this is going to be your cup of tea. So the fact that you guys are all here today is amazing, and the fact that you want to attend this session means that you are part of the change that we want to see here. So today, oh, they've missed our first slide off, that's all right. So I'm here today because I've been working in the industry for a couple of decades now, but the face of the industry has not changed in all that time. It's looked very much the same, and so there's something that we need to do that is different here. And so this is an amazing opportunity to connect with more people across more organizations who want to do the same as what we want to do. And making your workplace more inclusive, it's not rocket science. It's actually quite straightforward, but a lot of people are still too afraid. It feels like a taboo. We're scared of saying the wrong thing. So we're here today to show you that actually, don't be afraid. It's actually really straightforward, and there's lots that we can all do. So this masterclass is to tackle all of those taboos head on, and we're going to give you 10 easy tips to take back to your organization and to talk to your colleagues about at work. So whilst I work in social media at Aviva, my side hustle is also running our Origins community, which is like a multicultural network. So I'm coming with bringing kind of two perspectives to that. And I see myself as an entrepreneur within the organization, and I think all of you here can do the same because you're clearly interested in the topic, which is great to see. So first of all, let's give a little intro to you two actually, Hollie and Tommy. So I brought Hollie and Tommy along to give two really different perspectives and bring new diversity of thought into the conversation. So first of all, Hollie, do you want to give a little intro to who you are?
Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Hollie. I am from Boots. So Boots, hopefully most people know in this room, so it's pretty much everyone in the UK. So from a diversity and inclusion point of view, that's really important to make sure every single customer feels like they can shop at Boots without any restrictions. And that also implies to lots of our employees as well. So we have over 2,000 stores. Lots of those stores are filled with people that have worked at Boots for the last 60 or so years, which is an amazing feat. But it means that we've got, again, lots of diverse needs across our business. So yeah, really excited to be here today. Happy to share some thoughts that we've got and also learn as well, because I think it's important to say that everyone here is on a journey. No one has the full answers yet, but it's great to be able to be here and share some of it with you.
Great, thank you. Firstly, I'm just going to say it's really weird seeing everybody with headphones and having this kind of set up. I'm expecting half of you to be dancing. It's like a silent disco. But anyways, thank you for letting us be here. My name is Tommy. I come from a different, I guess, background and lens to these two. So my career, I'm an actor and a model. Been doing it now for about 10 years quite successfully. I've been in movies such as Thor, The Maze Runner, modeled for Calvin Klein, Ray-Ban, and now I've kind of transitioned into starting my own well-being company, me and my co-founder. And you know, what we do is we work with companies of all different sizes around all aspects of well-being and diversity. From my own personal experience and the transformative journey that I've been on in terms of my own well-being, and being an ethnic minority too, I try to translate that into you know, other corporations. So that's kind of a little bit about me and my journey.
Great, thank you, Tommy. So the first tip that we're going to give you is find the influencers in your organization. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to have kids queuing outside your offices trying to get a job there. However, there is a lot to be said for the people who actually want to make difference. The people who have that passion, who have the lived experience that Tommy's talking about. There's so much that they can bring to the organization that you need to find them, identify those people, and they can make a real difference. So having ERGs, I don't know if any of you have ERGs within your workplaces, employee resource groups, is really key to finding those people. So where I work, we have 6 different ERGs. We have one that represents different abilities, gender balance, caring responsibilities, different age generations, different cultural backgrounds, social mobility, and pride. And so that covers a really wide spectrum of different people. And making those people feel like they belong is key to getting that feeling of diversity, equity, belonging that we need to be more comfortable with. So getting those conversations going is really important. Do either of you two have those within your spaces?
We have the same thing at Boots, and I think the good thing about it is it provides a brilliant feedback network as well. So you learn from those groups, actually, as being sort of leader in the business, what are the things that maybe we need to improve on, where are opportunities to change, what are new things that maybe customers might be feeling or employees might be feeling. So it's a fantastic opportunity to get some feedback. I think the influencer thing's really interesting as well from a leadership perspective. So you've obviously got your BRG groups, which should always have like an exec sponsor if we can. But I think having the exec group engaged and influencing the policies, the governance, everything like that is so important, because at the end of the day, these are the big shifts that need to happen in certain cases, and so you have to get them on board.
How about you, Tommy?
Yeah, no, totally. I think when you think about, let's say when you think about change management and trying to incite change into an organization, it happens from the top down, but it also happens from the bottom up. So having those people of all different levels within an organization, being able to feel valued in terms of being able to push an agenda forward, create really sustainable change, as well as, like you said, having an exec sponsor, it really empowers everybody to push an important message that is close to people's hearts.
Yeah. And one that they're willing to be vocal about as well. So you will have seen with KSI, it was, Prime was all over social. We want this to be all over social, not the conversations that are said behind closed doors, with only kind of preaching to the converted. It needs to be in the mainstream. So find your people who are happy to talk, happy to go on my LinkedIn. You'll see all the stuff that I talk about. Same with Tommy and Hollie. All the stuff that we're actively talking about is what's getting these conversations into the mainstream, and we need more of that. So our next tip is about trying to fix people. So a lot of the time we talk about, but we need a development program for this type of person, or we need something to fix this problem. Actually, people don't need fixing. Yes, it's great to have a talent program here or there to help your development, but actually it's the environment and the culture around them that needs fixing. It's kind of, you have to think about, for people with a disability, it's the world around them that makes them suffer with that disability, because it's not designed to work with their disability. So make sure you've got buildings and processes that work for different people. With people who are kind of, their cultural background is to maybe be very humble and not talk about themselves too much, talk about their successes, then encourage them to be more vocal, encourage them to shout about what they're achieving, so that everybody's starting from a level playing field.
Yeah. I think I'd agree as well, just around sort of women as well. I think there's lots of female leadership programs that you can get on. There's lots in Boots, there's lots in the industry. And I do think, whilst they are good at accelerating the careers or the training and development for certain individuals, it is the structure around it that's really important. So flexible working, actually working with government around making sure that we can give people the right support around work is really important. There's cost of childcare. So I agree, so from a different perspective, it's almost, how do you structurally make it a great place to work so that people thrive, not just invest in sort of training and development.
And I guess to know how to structurally organise that, you need to also link in with those ERGs that we mentioned before, so that you've got an ear on the ground and you're listening to, so Muslims during Ramadan, they fast. Therefore, how do we need to accommodate that? So there are different nuances that I think that it's really important to be able to tap into those, and so you need the people on the ground to be able to do that. How about you?
I literally did a LinkedIn post about this yesterday, and it was around environments and creating those environments that are going to empower people and not fixing people like the tip is. And it's around, let's think around people who are neurodiverse. You need to create more bricks and mortar spaces as such to be able to accommodate those types of people. in other, demographics, it's around creating cultures where people feel empowered to be able and comfortable to be able to kind of speak up. Introverts, I guess, there's a lot of introverts out there who don't necessarily throw ideas into a boardroom as such, but actually their ideas are just as powerful and just as important as somebody else, but they may not get the opportunities just because they're not vocal about it. So it's around creating those environments to adapt different people and really let people shine. It's you said at the top of the call session, Anna, it can be very simple when you shift the focus to the people and really focusing on harnessing their potential.
I love that around like neurodiversity, because I think just some really simple things like sending around an agenda beforehand, being really clear with people what they need to thought about before they come into the meeting, and giving everyone an opportunity to speak around the room is so important. So you get those kind of different perspectives, and the conversation isn't, I guess, taken over by one set of people in the room. So yeah, I think it's really important.
Totally.
And I think to all of those points, the key is that unless you're actively including people, you're probably excluding them. You're almost certainly excluding them. So it has to be a really active thing that you're doing. I think the next one that we wanted to highlight was, this is a massive preconception. When it comes to diversity, I find a lot of people are like, oh, but I'm not black, I'm not brown, I can't take part in this conversation, it's not relevant to me. But please, if there's one thing you take away today, everybody in this room can do something to help. Everyone has got a part to play. We do a lot with allies within our communities where I work, and allyship it's a verb, it's not a noun, it's about the doing, it's the active allyship. And so I really want people to kind of take away that there is something that we can all do, even if it's like you were saying, that if you've got introverts in the room and you're speaking up for them, you're helping to bring them into the conversation. There are little things that you can do that can really help other people. And so you don't have to be black or brown or from an ethnic minority or disabled or gay. You can be a supporter of different groups without identifying as part of that group. And so I think that's one of the preconceptions that we just need to quash and not be afraid of making mistakes, because the other thing is, oh, like, can I say black? Can I say brown? Can I say race? Can I talk about this? Can I talk about that? And there are so many taboos that people are still too scared to talk about because we don't want to offend. I'll give you an example. During lockdown, we ran something called Aviva Radio, where we wanted to connect all the remote workers with people. We played music, we talked. It was really great, and we had callers call in to do dedications, etc. And I was hosting a show, and somebody called in. Let's call them Sam. And they were non-binary, but I didn't realise at the time. And knowing this person, I referred to them as she, and not thinking anything of it, carried on. And then I get a message in saying, I'm they, my pronouns are they. And I was mortified that I'd got somebody's pronouns completely wrong. And the thoughts running through my head at this time are, do I apologise? What do I need to do? Do I need to explain that I didn't realise? Do I explain that actually they to me is something that I'd always thought was plural? All these things are running through my head. But actually, the best thing to do in that occasion was to apologise, correct myself, and move on. And the feedback that I had was that actually we don't want a big fuss. If you make a mistake, don't make a big fuss about it. Just correct yourself, say sorry, move on. And then people learn from that experience. So I think going through that helps you to realise how to handle that kind of situation where you do get it wrong, but also give permission and that psychological safety for people to feel like I can get it wrong without it being a major disaster, and the world is not going to end. It actually just helps more people to learn.
Yeah, I think it's really important as well that you put yourself in the situation to get it wrong as well, because I think the other side of this is not doing anything or not engaging is also an action. And I think that was really that was an eye-opening thing for me to realise, is that actually if you're not engaging with this stuff, you're choosing almost one path to keep on going down. So I think for me, that's always the one thing I always try and remember is be in the conversation. Just like, if you're going to get it wrong, it's okay, apologise and move on.
It's about shifting it back to people, and again, to what these ladies have said is, you know, everybody can be an ally in these types of things. You know, it doesn't matter what cohort of people you are in. You can all help, because if we think about people, you're going to have a friend who may be LGBTQ, there may be, you know, your partner is obviously of a different gender. You know, so those are the things where you can make a difference in terms of supporting them. Now that doesn't mean everybody kind of thinks, oh, okay, now I actually have to be vocal about it. You know, that's kind of a bit scary to me. It doesn't have to be that you have to go on marches and things. Even the smallest things, you know, speaking up for people or kind of, you know, giving people opportunities. Those types of actions still make a difference. You know, for me, I did a Men's Health Week was last month, and you know, we reached like over 6 million people with our campaign in terms of targeting them. But because it was Men's Health Week, doesn't mean that we just had to target men, you know, because there are women out there who can support their spouses, sons, fathers. And the same, I do a lot of talks around the menopause to men's groups, because, you know, men should be educated on the menopause too. So it's all of those conversations that we can help facilitate or bring to the forefront. You don't actually have to be, you know, vocal and marching about something, but giving opportunity, facilitating stuff, supporting, those are the things that everybody, no matter where you sit in an organization, those are the things that we can be doing.
And a lot of us here today are obviously from marketing and advertising backgrounds. We've got to remember diversity is not just the physical characteristics, it's also that diversity of thought. And I personally find that having a bit of creative friction is really healthy. So I like having different people in the room, different thoughts in the room, challenge my thinking. So it's also really important to think about that diversity of thought as well, rather than just the immediate physical of what you see. So our next tip, Tommy, over to you.
Yeah, get your data use IT. So I'm going to kind of throw it out there to everybody. You know, anybody who kind of deals with the D&I data, maybe raise your hands, and maybe you guys may not deal with the data, but would you know if your company has collected like over 70% of your employees' data? Is there anybody in this room who would say that 70% of their employees, they've got their data captured in terms of DEI?
Looks like not many.
I think that's a resounding zero.
I have one.
One.
It is. I've worked with so many companies where their data is shocking. And you know, that's through a number of reasons. That's through not having the right messaging around why that you're collecting data. You know, employees, when they start, they'll be very fearful about, you know, why do I have to give over my DEI data? What are you going to do with it? Because they don't necessarily trust their employer to do the right actions. So it's around how you position that messaging, what you're going to do with it. And actually, when you collect that data, doing purposeful and meaningful things with that, because a lot of it is assumed to just be a tick box exercise. So it's around putting initiatives in place based on the data that you gather to be able to do meaningful actions with that. And then obviously, again, you know, once you've collected that data, it's analyzing that and making sure that, you know, if you have a demographic of people who are mainly women, making sure that there's support for those women, having those networks in place for them to go to. So data is so important in kind of understanding what you do next, because there's so many companies that I've kind of done strategic consultancy with, and we've done campaigns and work with, that just do D&I and well-being just because they feel they need to. But actually, if you use your data, you can do so much more powerful stuff with that.
What if we flip that question on its head? How many people here would be willing to give their data to their employer? Would you be happy to share your religion, your sexuality, your socio-economic background? Would everybody here be happy to give that?
Raise your hands.
Well, that's really great to see, actually, because that's probably higher than usual. Because at a lot of companies, there isn't sufficient trust to give that. So I think that's a big factor, whether you've got the trust in your employer to do something meaningful with that data.
I'd say the other time I think data is really useful is people always question, you know, International Women's Day, or they might question sort of like the reason of having just Pride once a year. Why do we do these things once? And I think for me, it's around having the data at those moments as almost like the benchmark to say, right, how far have we come in the last year? How much more have we still got to do? And I think it's really important that those things are done across industries as well, not just in companies, because I think sometimes it's our collective power as an industry that's going to move it as much as it is within your own organisation as well.
And ISBA, the Incorporated Society of British Advertisers, are really good with that.
Yeah.
They've just done the all-in census, which is something that looks at the entire industry. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend having a quick Google, because it's a brilliant way to benchmark kind of where you are in your organisation, and really great ideas as to what you can action to take back to your organisation too.
Connect with stories, okay. Yeah, so, for me, I've grown up, my career as an actor, I've grown up playing stories, I've been telling characters on the screen, and I think we can all agree that growing up, when we watch TV, we watch movies, we're drawn in through storytelling. Those are the things that evoke feelings within us. Those are the things that help make us change. They change our ideas, our opinions around stuff. So storytelling to me is so powerful. I've kind of been through it throughout my whole life. And the great thing about storytelling is that every single one of us, on this panel, everybody here has a story to tell, all about different things. So kind of tapping into that potential and telling your story is so powerful. I do a lot of, I do a lot of keynotes, talks with companies and events around my own story in terms of well-being and D&I. And there's nobody can tell my story, just like nobody can tell your story. Whatever experiences you're going through, only you can say that, and it's you who has the power to be able to evoke emotion and feeling, and then change at the end of that. When people can relate to you, that enables them and empowers them to open up around their own story. So then if you imagine within a company, you have somebody telling their own story about a specific area, and that allows other people and gives permission to other people to tell their stories. Think of the ripple effect that starts to have within a company in terms of driving culture change. So storytelling to me, no matter in what industry, in what area, is so powerful. And that's around allowing, so as companies and employers, allowing your employees and your colleagues to be able to share their stories, and that's through networks. That's through giving people the spotlight. That's through people giving opportunities to tell their story. You never know what impact that has on somebody else. And then, that kind of is a domino effect, and it starts to ripple.
And Hollie, you mentioned the exec sponsors. I think they have the platform already to share those stories.
Totally.
So it's about giving people the platform, the reach that they will have to be able to share them. And also, I think the risk of not telling your story is that actually other people will make assumptions then. They'll write their own narrative about you, and that will be peppered with all the preconceptions that they might have based on what they see of you, what they've heard of you. So it's really important, I think, to grasp that story yourself and have control over what people see of you.
Yeah, it's like the sort of Simon Sinek start with why, idea concept, that like people believe in your why rather than sort of like what you do. So I completely agree. I think it's so important because also people can relate to it. It means something. It's not just like we're going to do this. This is why I believe we should do this. So
yeah, I think for me, from my own experience, when I was at school, if I could have a teacher harness the power of storytelling in terms of saying about their own experience rather than reading from a textbook and telling me around D&I. If I could actually hear, I resonate with that person because I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, wow, that's what they went through, that's how they feel, rather than just hear it. So it's hugely powerful.
And nobody forgets a great teacher, right? In the same way that nobody will forget a great role model. Once you see a role model there that you can aspire towards, there's someone to look up to. There's something to aspire towards. So yeah, definitely with you on that.
And then culture equals brand. So really, I see this in lots of different organizations that I work with. They'll talk around D&I. And they'll have really, internally, they'll have some really great initiatives. They'll have the networks, they'll have speakers in, they'll, have a lot around representation. But then externally, it doesn't match. There's so, I always take a look, if we look at from a brand point of view and a marketing point of view, where you have a company who, I know is very inclusive, but then I look at their marketing materials and I think, okay, well, you just have a load of white men, advertising your stuff. something doesn't align there. So really, everything within an organization, from your leadership, who sits on your exec board, to your marketing, to all the networks that you have, has to be congruent. Because that is how people understand, when you're recruiting, that you really mean what you say. If you have things which are a bit disconnected, then it means that you haven't considered all of those different things, and that kind of taints you and doesn't give you as much weighting behind what your brand actually represents.
And the converse also applies. Don't be showing all your marketing and your recruitment of, hey, look how diverse we are, look how inclusive we are, if actually, in fact, you're not. It has to be authentic both ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's tricky though, right? Because I would say coming from a big corporate, we've got thousands of employees, and so orchestrating that across your marketing, your recruitment, your internal policies is difficult. But I think it's the right ambition to have, and I think it's about getting on the journey, figuring out which one of those is the most important thing to do first, and then just going after it.
Yeah, and you think about the umbrella of D&I. You can't hit every single thing in like one marketing campaign. So you're right. It's about thinking what is of value and what's important. And I do think Boots get it right. From the stuff I see from Boots, really hits it on the head. But yeah, it's around pushing what is right for that particular. If it's a campaign, what is right for that campaign, which kind of reflects what your organization is.
And it is not about ticking every single box in every single campaign. That is absolutely what we don't want to do. In our latest brand campaign at Aviva, I was involved on a consultancy basis in our storyboarding of our ad. We had a diverse cast who were actually shooting the ad. So it's not just about who you've got on screen. Not the cast, the crew. So it's not just who you've got on screen. It's also the crew that you've got working behind the scenes. I walked in here today and I saw the guys over here on the tech desk, and I was so happy to see the diversity that we've got behind the scenes, as well as the people that we've got here, the fact that we're holding this session here today. It's everything. It's that full 360 of how you're operating and how you're running your ad campaigns, not just who you see on screen.
So I guess really nicely leading on from what we've just been talking about is one of my top tips is prioritizing what matters. And when I look at from the Boots perspective, we started as a business that was founded on the basis of democratizing healthcare. So over sort of nearly 100 years ago, a family called the Boots family set up Boots because healthcare in the UK was not affordable for all. And so it's very much in the DNA of the business to have that. Our purpose is with you for life. And as I said sort of previously, we've got a wide variety of customers that sit within the sphere of who we serve. But a big proportion of them are women. And actually, women's health, I think definitely over the last few years, people have recognised has been incredibly underserved, and particularly through the menopause as well. It's great to hear that you mentioned it and around bringing people into that conversation. So that was one of the things that we wanted to do, both in our external marketing and also in our internal policies. So giving our employees financial support for HRT, making sure that everyone in the business has been on menopause training so they understand the signs and symptoms of what someone is going through. And then also creating these BRG groups, called business resource groups at Boots, to connect people who are going through the menopause as well, because it is such a lonely time actually. You're unclear on how your body should be feeling, how your skin should look, how your makeup should sit. People in your network might not be going through it as well. So it's been really hugely valuable for the people involved to get part of those networks. So for us, when we go, right, what's our brand purpose? What matters to Boots? Really, women's health is at the forefront of that. And so for us, prioritising it was one of the most important things we've done in the last couple of years. So I don't know if you guys have got any sort of similar examples.
I think it comes back to the data stuff as well. Understanding your data can help determine what matters in those things. If you're thinking, if your demographic of employees, the majority is women, then you want to be able to cater for that demographic. They want to be heard, So putting women's health at the forefront, to be able to know that, you as an employer are there for them. You can use that data to do that. I think menopause is one of those things which so many companies are starting to realize is important, because for so long women have felt that they haven't been heard when it comes to a certain age. I think men's health is another one, that is really kind of really being prioritized at the moment, because men don't feel as though they're listened to. So a lot of companies are starting to prioritize men's mental health. It's something that I can definitely relate to, and I kind of campaign and support companies with. Another one that I kind of use the data from is, I'm of mixed heritage. My mum is from Thailand, my dad is British, and I go into companies, and for me, I speak to a lot of them, and I listen to a lot of support networks and talks, which cater to, very, I guess, binary, if that's the right word, topics. But actually, as the world and society is progressing, and I don't know if there's any mixed people in this audience, but actually I do a lot of talks and I speak to employees around like the lost identity, because I don't feel connected to that, or I don't feel connected to maybe the Asian topic, or I don't feel connected to more of the Caucasian stuff. So actually, there's a cohort of people who are like, well, where do I fit in?
It's kind of, you're too white to be Indian, but too brown to be British.
Yeah.
So, you're not English or Indian. And so that struggling with those two identities is a challenge that a lot of people will face with mixed heritage. But it's about letting people embrace both of those. And to the storytelling point, tell your story as to what that means for you, how that translates into your working life. And I think the other thing was that I was thinking was when you were talking about the ERGs, and when you've got so much to do, and this feels like such a big agenda, and are you trying to boil an ocean here? Prioritizing is key. So within our networks, we give all of the volunteers with that 3 days a month to spend on this activity. So whilst it's something that a lot of these people are doing off the side of their desk, it kind of needs to be integrated within a job, rather than it feeling like the people who are suffering from the consequences of a lack of inclusion being the ones who have got that kind of on their shoulders of they're the ones that are trying to improve it. So I think giving people the time, the permission, and showing from the top down that actually it's okay to spend some of your time doing this, not you have to go home at the weekend and in the evenings to do this in your spare time. No, it's part of your job. It's something that's really helping a lot of people across an organisation.
Yeah,
so
I love that. I think that's great, because I think it's also, even though people might not use the 3 days all the time, it's the permission, isn't it? Making sure people feel like they can take it. They might do more, they might do less, but having that allocated is really important. Right, our next one. So get external support. So as I sort of mentioned, Boots is a big company, so I think it's really helpful for us to be able to go outside of ourselves and ask for help and say, right, what, from an outsider's point of view, could we be doing better or differently? What's good about our customer journeys? Are we doing the right marketing? Team, what is it that we think we could be doing better at? So a couple of things that we've done is employed an external consultancy to review all of our marketing and communications. Off the back of that, we actually changed a lot of our imagery as well. So all of our images are in our campaigns are now of people who work at Boots. We also do street casting. We don't do any airbrushing. We don't use any models really anymore. And I think a lot
Sorry,
of that,
Tommy, no job for you there.
Well, it's kind of
but it's sort of like, it means now that actually people recognise people like them in our ads, which is really nice. I think that's something we feel really proud of. And the other thing we've been doing as well is working with procurement, which is probably not a sort of a team that's often mentioned at MadFest, but really great partners for the marketing team around working to get businesses and suppliers involved in Boots who are diverse. So creating a framework to say, actually, we won't work with you unless you hit these types of criteria, which are really important to us. And actually, a lot of businesses that we've been working with have either stepped up and changed or moved on, and we've been able to find different companies to work with that meet the DE&I agenda that we have. And then also, I guess, on a similar note, around the products that we put on our shelves, we've got a huge push at the moment to get brands from different types of businesses, different backgrounds, onto the shelves at Boots. And it's so important because it not just puts different people on the shelves of Boots, but also helps those founders grow, and they become then the role models for the future for other people. So I guess for us, if it was sort of, you know, my tip would be is like look outside of your organisation and ask someone what more you could be doing. There's so much out there. There's so many resources. There's so much to do, really.
Oh yeah, I think, you know, even places like this, you know, you're mingling, you're networking with people from different organizations. Ask them what they do. You know, ask them what works for them, what doesn't work. You know, and it's again back to the storytelling thing. I'm not here to pitch myself, but you know, there's many people like me and other consultants. You know, we'll come in and we'll take an external lens and we'll say, actually, you know, that doesn't hit it right. You know, we work with other companies, so we can make suggestions what other people are doing and what's tried and tested there. You know, it's around people that you know, even outside of your organization, asking them what they do in their companies. All of that feedback throughout the whole process makes change happen.
And that leads quite nicely onto your final point, Hollie.
Tip, yeah. This is one actually, so getting feedback from customers is really important to us. So, and I recognised it this year when we had some feedback from customers on social media about our sign-up process to the Advantage card. So through the process, you give your name, you give your address, etc., your details, but you also give your gender. And actually, on reflection, we just hadn't reviewed this in a very long time, and it was just sort of sitting there in the background. It's not something that someone's doing all the time, but because the customer told us, actually, does that feel relevant today to even have gender on there? Why do you need it? We made the decision to take it off. And it's just as simple as that. But if we weren't listening, if we weren't watching social media, if we weren't listening to our call centre feedback, we would never have known that. And so it was important for us to make sure that got prioritised over other things that we could have done. So for a business like Boots, you have a strict budget around how much money I can invest in product development. But this is important, so it gets prioritised over something else. So I guess that's the final tip, is just to listen, really. Listen and act upon what customers are telling you. And there'll be a number of things I'm sure that they'll tell us in the future that we should change. But it's about making sure you act upon it as well.
And have your ears to the ground within your organisation as well. Back to your influencers, back to your ERGs. Listen to what they're telling you, because actually they've got so much rich data from within your company that you can use. So listen internally as well as externally.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Feedback. Although I do have one question. What's this guy got to do with feedback?
Does anybody watch Love Island here? Yeah? A few. So you should know that this guy and feedback. Yeah, you need to watch. You need to watch Love Island to get it. Right. But I always have to squeeze Love Island into every presentation that I do, because you should be a fan of Love Island because you sponsor the thing.
Do, yeah. I watch it a little bit.
So to summarise, these are our top 10 tips that we'd love you to take away with you today. I think to finish with this, the 10th tip is to bring this conversation out of this room here into the wider world. Take what you've learned, any provocations that you thought, oh, actually, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, anything new that you've learned, or even just sharing that we held this session today. That just normalizes the whole conversation and helps people to feel a bit more comfortable to speak about the taboos, to say the things that they might be a bit afraid to say on social media. So you know the hashtag over here, MadFest23. Share on Twitter, LinkedIn, connect with us. If you've got any questions, we're happy to take any questions after the session. Or if you want to ask any now, we're happy to take any, if we can get these headphones to work. So yeah, please do share with your colleagues and with other people who haven't attended this session. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like us to tackle right now?
And while you're thinking about that just one more offer as well from me is that we've got these brilliant resource groups. It sounds like at Aviva and also at Boots, and I'm not going to volunteer you, but maybe you would be happy to as well, is that if you have those in your organisations, happy to connect you as well, because I think there's lots of opportunity to learn from each other. And if you haven't got any and you want to set one up, more than happy to connect anyone in this room with the ones that we've got at Boots, because it's a fabulous way to learn. And as Shoshana said, like the connections and getting the conversation going is all about what we need to do. So, yeah, the offer's there.
Any questions? Oh, we have one.
Oh, I think we need to pop these on.
When this video is recording, with all three of us talk with our hands, so the video is just going to be us like this.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about feedback. You know, when you've got like a large organization and you start getting too many feedback from too many different people, everyone's thought process is very, very different. Especially from a management point of view, you might make a decision and some people might not be happy with it. How do you guys prioritize feedback in terms of which one to take on board and which one you have to kind of put to the side, which can also be a difficult thing to do?
Do you want to start with that, Hollie?
I think that's a good question. It's interesting, I can hear myself. I might just take this off while I answer. So I would say it's about getting the feedback from the BRG groups, first of all. What do they think is the most important thing to tackle first, I would say, rather than putting it to sort of an exec or a leadership level. They probably don't know, so I would say that would be the first thing. I'd also look at how frequently that feedback is coming through, so the frequency of it, and then also the value of it as well. So by making this change, how many people are we going to impact here, and is it going to have a significant impact on them? Because volume of people is good, but also if there is a big thing that needs to be changed for a few people, but it'll make a massive difference to their life, that's also really important. So I think there's probably a few different ways that we would prioritise it. And the other thing is also cost as well. It's an unfortunate point, but if there are certain things that have a cost attached to them, you will have to make a decision based on that. But a lot of these things don't, actually. A lot of these things are kind of a bit easier. So, yeah, from a Boots point of view, it's really a value and cost equation and getting the feedback from your team, actually, around what's important.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, I'd just add, it's a really nice problem to have. If you've got loads of people giving loads of ideas and they want to contribute to that conversation, grab those people because they're the ones that are going to make a difference. So, yeah, I think it's a good problem to have. Any other questions from anyone?
Thank you. It was really good to hear both from a Boots perspective and an Aviva perspective how you're putting kind of people of colour, and you spoke about how also you consider the team as well and representation in the team. So it sounds like there's a real kind of focus on representation. What are you doing, I guess, from your perspective? You come from a much more kind of customer marketing background. So what are you doing from that perspective to ensure that those ads are also being seen by the right people, considering like different channels that you can use and things like that to kind of direct channel mix and messaging to a diverse audience as well?
It's a great question. For me, actually, I think when I look at Boots, the things that define whether someone buys something or not is actually the way that they purchase and their shopping behaviour. And I actually think sometimes that's regardless of your makeup, your DNA, or anything like that. So the sorts of things that we're doing is looking at things that you've bought before to inform what you might want to buy next. If you're looking at sort of channel, we have information around what channels you will be more inclined to go into versus other. I'd much rather use the data of what you have done rather than trying to have a guess around what someone might want to do, because I worry that actually sometimes creates a bit of
Bias.
Exclusion and bias in it. Yeah, like who am I to say where someone should be or shouldn't be? So we base it completely off consumer behaviour. That is 100% the guiding light. I don't know if you guys have got any experience in that.
Yeah, I would agree. So we do it kind of end to end, from planning our ads, from casting them, from the location we're going to shoot in. So we're trying to appeal from that perspective, using the insights that we have, the research that we have. So yeah, it's very much front of mind all the way through for us as well. Tommy, I think it's probably less of your field.
Yeah, I think you guys have just said exactly the right things, and I think we're being called off. That's why I'm like...
We're out of time.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you everybody for coming. Really appreciate you coming to the session and hopefully taking lots back to your companies.